Child care house really is a outcome, maybe as a way to say it, related to the challenges that we are facing in our communities everywhere. And as we think about what those challenges are, the problem that brings us together, we know that in many more communities than not, we're facing or working through what we call a childcare desert. And plainly put, simply means not enough childcare, right, to meet the needs of our communities. And we know that as a general rule, it's more than just a overall quantity and overall capacity. More and more, it's about, does that capacity meet the needs of the families, right? Not everybody goes to work the same that they used to. We have families who have folks that are working second shift. We have single moms who are working at the clinic. We have all sorts of different types of care that extends beyond many of the needs that we maybe historically thought about when it comes to childcare. And so our work again is focused on helping uncover what those opportunities are. And we've done a lot of that work, both on behalf of communities, but then in many cases beyond the community itself, working within those communities to help providers, childcare centers who might be in crisis, family childcare providers who are looking for ways to remain sustainable. And we're really proud of our work. We've had a big impact based here in Minnesota, where we are located, all the way out to North Carolina, Illinois, and other states around the country. What we focus on and how we make this work is really our idea of the whole community approach. How do we bring everybody who benefits from childcare to the table to find ways to create solutions that also benefit everybody? And in our work, we really work hard to center the childcare community for the purposes of this exercise. It becomes really quite an interesting dialogue at whatever stage of readiness communities are, the opportunity to help everybody see why there's a win, right? Our workforce leaders win because people can suddenly come to work. Our education leaders win because kids become maybe to school at kindergarten more prepared. And our overall community and our families win because there are options of able to meet those varied and diverse needs that we see in communities day in and day out. And ultimately, it leads to this idea that we speak quite a bit about, which is wage realization. Right? Two very simple words put together that highlight just the basic idea of childcare in today's world is it allows people to go to work, right? And it empowers that workforce to seek and pursue and achieve the working outcomes that they're looking for, which leads to ultimately, we think, more economic growth, right? If I have a wage, I realize suddenly I can invest in those shops on Main Street and buying housing that grounds me even further in my community. And ultimately, it leads us to a place of even stronger community well-being, right? Just as one particular tool. And so many of you are in different stages. Some of you, as I said, are familiar faces, but we find communities really in three stages of readiness. A place, some still today are understanding what that impact is. What does it really mean that we don't have enough childcare? I heard some stories or heard some anecdotes. We see more and more communities taking action on that information and that understanding and working to develop a plan. And more today, especially as we move into the new year, focused on we know what we need to do. We know the outcome that we're looking for, and we need help activating that plan. And that's really, again, where Childcare House has been such a focus for us, is the understanding that one family childcare provider can make a huge difference in a community, in all of the communities that we live in, right? How do we bring childcare closer to home? And for some of you here in Minnesota, this community is familiar, but one family provider, right, unlocks, in this particular case, over $350,000 in wages, right? And that one provider, more and more, is becoming harder to find. And we're finding the reasons being is because spaces or homes are not necessarily desired to be their workplace or their place of business. We have many situations, we've all heard of them, where family dynamics are such that maybe we don't want to live within a child care space ongoing. And more, folks just aren't owning homes the way they used to. Or maybe they're in a position where their home is not suitable for running a smaller family childcare. And yet we know in communities like Harris and many others we only need one or maybe two family childcare providers. And so it becomes our opportunity as a community to really figure out ways in which we can help bring childcare closer to home. Right? How can we create the space that becomes maybe less of the limiting factor? How can we create a space influenced by what the needs of the community are, a particular sponsor? How can we better meet those needs for a better outcome? And so you see our illustration here. It's designed as a residential unit. And what we've done is created a turnkey approach to it that really combines all of what we found to be limiting factors to success in even creating the smallest childcare spaces. And in a brief overview on your screen gives you an idea of understanding, validating the business case, not only for the community and the building itself, but also for the individual operator. Having a team that actually takes on ownership of managing the construction and the development and the site prep and all the details that go into that. Having the partners like Lakeshore Learning that as part of this turnkey package help us bring that space to life, right? Not just an empty space and good luck to you, but designed and set up with the appropriate learning materials aligned with whatever that particular provider's focus of programming is going to be. And the one that we're getting the most feedback from, the most excitement, is the kind of the roundup of putting together the funding roadmap. How do you actually pay for this? Right? We have well-meaning individuals, great folks out in all of our communities, but often the challenge is understanding the 15 different buckets of dollars that might be available. How do they apply to your community? How do they apply to this project? And that's what we're excited about having done. Tricia, Kelly, all of us, as well as our partners, is put together basically the whole deal, the whole turnkey package, so that we eliminate the lack of confidence. We eliminate the risk that comes with unknown activities and opportunities, and rather focuses your effort as a community and our providers and our families on what the outcome is going to be. What 8 to 10 families are we going to be able to serve in 6 months when we are able to open up and have this space available? So Childcare House is designed to be a community supported opportunity. We've had several calls. Hey, can I just get a childcare house myself? Sure, you can. But the magic here is how we bring it together in a way that it becomes something where everybody wins and everybody has a part in it. When we talk about shovel ready, we leverage a opportunity of hybrid building. Pieces and components are manufactured off-site, but it is not built off-site, taken apart and brought on board. That's a clear distinction, but in the case of our setup, is finished and completed on site, as I mentioned, using high quality residential furnishings. We don't want to create a single use investment, which often is what childcare centers are at a magnitude and multiple of the price point. This allows you to create a residential home that today is going to be focused on supporting childcare needs, but 5-10 years from now or some point in the future, if it's not needed for that, every community we visit often is in need of housing as well, and it quickly and easily, literally the next day, can be converted into a housing space. You can see one of the working blueprints here: a fully electric unit, a full kitchen, full bathroom, a full bedroom, and then lots of space in between to really, as you can see, our partners at Lakeshore Learning have brought to life, see how the illustration of a space for children plays out in this space. Really designed to feel like home, but to be a space. This is, to be clear, not to be lived in. It's not a primary residence. It's meant to be a place that Miss Susie or Miss Betty or whoever is able to go from where they live each morning to this space, use this, just like I refer to it, Main Street childcare, right? A small business front, but only it's a home that's doing that work, serving our children and serving our families. I hope you've got some questions coming up. I am coming to the end of kind of the introduction here, and our real goal is to hopefully engage and answer some more questions. The big win also for communities, we've got a handful of communities since we soft launched this last fall, and I'll highlight one in particular here in a second. Really excited about our ability to turn this around. Less than 6 months, weather permitting. Certainly right now, no one's building anything, but we are already in prep for several of the units that are slated for deliveries. The win for you as a community is you're going to help create a quality space aligned to local needs that at the right level of amount boosts access for families. And as I highlighted before, even if we're sending 8 to 10 adults to work each day because of this opportunity, what an opportunity that is for our communities. There are examples in Minnesota in particular of what we call hosted spaces. The one that we always nod our head to, Mahawa up in Detroit Lakes, northwestern Minnesota, over 20 years has hosted 4 providers in spaces. They're often referred to as pods, if you've maybe heard that term before, but really been a great illustration of what's worked great and what opportunities, even in my conversations with those providers, could be improved. We've taken those things, other learns along the way, and really worked to perfect this as a model that really can be deployed in your community. Our most recent example using existing spaces, what we call hosted spaces, down in Northfield, Minnesota. 2 different units, one a mother-daughter unit here that you see, Candace and Peyton, and then Madison Quall, both who were unable to open and run family childcare spaces in their own existing space, now operating over the last year in these spaces, hosted and supported by the community, right? That's the magic here, and that's the piece that as part of our work, we help communities even identify who will be the right provider to come through and be the person that you're hosting to meet those specific needs. So the concept is there. It's not available in every state. Certainly, I think if you've made it to this call, we've worked intentionally to only include those who this applies to. But the big win, $269,000 all in, plus whatever your site acquisition costs are, and then in the cases of some lots, there might be some site preparation. The example I'm going to share with you, our inaugural childcare house is on an infill lot within the existing community. What we do also in our process and our approach is intentional. We start and deliver this really over 3 phases. And what I've highlighted on the screen here today is what we call phase 1 for our projects. It's included as part of the $269,000, but it's the confidence builder. What you end up with is a childcare house launch blueprint that confirms your site selection, confirms the business case, both again for the childcare house as well as the prospective operator, and most importantly, ties all of the pieces together with a funding roadmap. So as you finish phase 1 in generally 30 to 45 days, we've really worked hard with our partners to perfect this process. You have confidence to continue on with phase 2, which is the building and construction and launch of the childcare house. I do like to highlight phase 3, which is also included in this purchase or investment, is year 1 support. One of the biggest challenges we found in talking to family providers, and it's highlighted in studies across the country, is, gosh, it was really exciting. I got up and running, and then the doors open, and then I was by myself. And what we do is we provide first-year check-ins from a business perspective. Our funding roadmap partner, Rural Pathways, closes the loop on any reporting that's necessary for a grant that might have been received. And Lakeshore Learning provides 2 drop-ins, first quarter and third quarter, of some backup materials, paints, and things like that as an example, to again further connect that provider to a sustainable opportunity that's supported by the community. It's a recipe for success. It's one we're really excited about, and one that I want to highlight, our first inaugural series that will be the first ever. Mayor Annis, the Mapleton, Minnesota EDA, the City Council, and others started this journey in November, and we are now just finished. We just finished up actually their phase 1, what I just highlighted here. They have their funding roadmap defined, they confirm their site. This is the site. It was a site that at the moment is not appealing to today's builders. And so it's a great opportunity, 2 blocks from the local elementary school. And if you're not familiar, Mapleton, Minnesota is 2,000 folks. Not a huge population, a handful of family providers, very supportive of this process. But they started, like many communities do, focused on building a childcare center. And what we quickly found out, and what they quickly realized, as many of you might have, the perils of trying to run a center in a smaller community are really challenging. And so I know Mayor Annis and others are looking at this as their first opportunity, but even in my last conversation last week, he's already talking about 2 other sites in other parts of the city for similar investments that allow to maintain the character of the neighborhood, but bring that child care closer to home. So it's a really great opportunity. I'm really glad all of you were able to join us. And I do want to open it up for questions, conversations, maybe even if it's not specific to Child Care House, you've got a challenge you're working on in your community, we can certainly dissect that. I don't have any new information, so if you were just here for observation and sharing, we appreciate you joining us. Our team will be sure to follow up with you. I see, Brian, you came up on the video, so maybe you've got a question. I'd love to welcome you.
Yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, I figured that way you didn't have to stare at me the whole time until the questions came up. But I'd say two questions, well, at least two questions. The overall amount that you said, the 270 or so, um, actually, that's not the question. Sorry, let me rephrase the question. Do you know with the house that's put up, if down the road we have a provider that is operating out of there and is like, hey, I'd really like to actually move into this house. Have you seen any models where that actually becomes a thing? I think the model was showing it's only a one bedroom house, so that could maybe get tricky. But could there be a model where you actually have a two bedroom house to have that option of someone moving in there at some point?
That's a great question. Our draftsman, Adam Steinke, done a great job on this design and more features than I even highlighted today. But he already has the layout set up, Brian, for the second bedroom. So for the communities who are considering, again, future state, we're always thinking about today what we need, but what is it downstream? So in your example, or in the other more, I think, example we'll see play out even more reasonably is in 10 years, we don't need that space now. And or for whatever reason, we don't want, now we want to convert it to housing. People want two bedrooms, they don't want one. So it does allow and is already set up to do that very simply, being able to add that in if that became a need. To your earlier question, which I think is a great one and shouldn't be overlooked, there's nothing to say you can't have somebody living in this home or buy this home and live in it and run it. You're again now really building a residential space, and we're adding in obviously the turnkey package is all part of it. It's all one piece of it. It's not something that shouldn't be considered, just something that we've looked at more from the perspective of sometimes the issue is people don't want to live where they're providing
Right.
that care. And so being able to provide that. The other bigger one that we found, and this has been even from our own experiences, so many individuals out there who are willing to do this work, but they just don't have the space to do it. Right. Madison Quall in Northfield, she rents she rents her space. And right away she was going to be working at one of the local gas stations, Quick Trip, because she couldn't do it, right? And she didn't have
Sure.
space to go do it. So suddenly this opportunity opens. Same thing we saw play out in Stevens County, Minnesota, Western Minnesota. They built 6 units. And I had a chance to meet Administrator Young and Commissioner Kompitsky out there early last year, which helped inspire some of our things. But 5 of the 6 providers there, the initial launch, were new. They weren't, concern often is, well, what if Miss Susie leaves her home and just moves into this space? And what we encourage communities to say is focus your initial ones on new capacity. Doesn't mean downstream you might not create an opportunity where somebody wants to transition. We certainly want to be mindful of that, but you're also trying to create new capacity, right? So how do you do
Yeah.
that in a way that's smart there? So I think there's the variables there. What we're set up with all of our partners, and most importantly with our building partner, is a 50-unit inaugural series where we're really focused on maintaining kind of what you see is what you get, and using that as our opportunity for next generation, the next 50 to take into account some of the things that we're going to inevitably learn through this process. Our partners are all hands-on, and we're really excited to be collaborating with communities as part of this inaugural series as well. So Brian, I'm taking your question and going way longer, but I appreciate your playing along. I know you had some other questions as well.
Yeah. I appreciate the answers and to not monopolize the time, but a quick question too is we we hear from Minnesota Deed that the second round of the child care grant is looking to be projected as June of this year for proposals. And we as a community, we really want to be right in line with some shovel-ready projects and ideas for that. Um, the way I would think about this is continuing a conversation with you guys and looping in some of our cities and townships to see where we could put some of these houses for that childcare grant opportunity. And there was a question there, but I kind of forgot the question side, and I'm just trying to think of, because we also have a housing trust fund, but I don't think our housing trust fund could touch this if people aren't living there. But the child care deed grant, which hopefully still comes out, we'll see, is something that this would be good for.
It's a great opportunity for it, and I know communities are thinking about it that way, and even beyond deed grants, right? How do we, with our funding partner, Rural Pathways, we've really done a great job of. Yeah, I think that I call it 15 buckets, and that might be the wrong. But you think about there's federal dollars, there's state, there's all these different buckets of money. What they're doing is, just to your point early on, before we get too far down the road as part of this discovery, locking that down, so we're not guessing and hoping and wishing, but really have not only a beginning point, right? What they do is they actually create in that phase one blueprint 3 pathways. Because we also know there's your priority of how we'd want to do it, but then we got to have some backup plans. And so as each of those kind of dominoes of funding fall, what they do is work to then, in essence, revisit that funding map, update it now to what's our next highest priority of opportunity that, takes advantage of the grants, takes advantage of things that reduce even further the investment by anybody outside the collective mass that some of those offerings provide. So I think that's a really distinct part, right? We can build buildings and we can find providers, but if we can't pay for the package piece, that becomes often the piece that keeps many of us sitting on the sidelines. And Brian, I think you highlight something I just want to highlight for the group, that part of our work we do broadly is, and we're working in several counties, so more of a county landscape, is to think about collectively, even as a county, we've got maybe 5 communities that there's more than 5 communities, but the five main ones. And maybe those are the 5 ones that we think we should each have a childcare house. We also are able to work through this process to help communities kind of figure out what is the best way to look at that. What are, in each community's got 2 or 3 of these, maybe infill lots. Well, one's better than probably the other 2. How do we even, from a starting point, prioritize that? And we do a lot of that work early on before we even get into phase 1. So we find our focus in that phase 1 for each community. I'll also highlight, we have one community right now, I'll be in next week to finalize in front of their group and board. They're looking at putting 4 units on one site. And so that also opens up some additional opportunities. If you think about that logically, it's still 48 slots. Bigger actually than most small centers in Minnesota.
Sure.
I'm just using Minnesota as the example. I know we have some other folks outside Minnesota, but same generally holds true. Here's the big win for the communities. We have now 4 new business owners. 1, so economic development perspective. We've now also created the opportunity for 4 different types of care. The challenge for a center often is, I'm a center and I offer what the center offers. With 4 different units, I might have one that serves second shift. I might have one that meets a bilingual need. I might have one, right? So you have, as a community, some opportunity now to, even in a smaller community, diversify and create choice that our families often are seeking. So a lot of opportunities to take one smaller lot, take a slightly larger lot, something in between, and again, find the right amount and align with the need rather than kind of a one size fits all approach.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian.
Cool. Thank you.
Questions. Other questions from the group, and please don't feel free or feel like you have to come on camera to talk about them. If you want to throw them in the chat section, we'll try to grab those. I know Kelly and Trisha, you've been in a lot of these calls. Are there other kind of basic things people have been asking about that I'm overlooking today?
No, I think you nailed all the points.
We, again, try not to make it too complicated either, right? I think that's a big piece. Brian, thanks again for being here. We've really tried to take the guesswork. We've really tried to take out all of the consternation, all of the often what goes into, because we don't know. We're willing as economic development leaders, as community leaders, as education leaders, but we often don't necessarily have all those pieces to move forward with confidence. I hope you'll, if you don't have any more questions today, our team will reach out. If you have questions that we can talk about offline, or even if you have a particular property that might be a candidate, we can do a basic overlay to just give you a quick idea, and then certainly use that as a basis for further conversation. Any other questions today? Look at us being efficient with time. We wrapped it up. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to hopefully helping you and your childcare needs in the future.